Hi, and welcome to the Fulfilled Truth podcast. My name is Mario, and this is the podcast in which we like to have, or I like to have, uncomfortable conversations for a wealthy life. Today, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Landon Frost here with me. And the reason why I wanted to interview Dr. Frost is because he's a young entrepreneur who's been in the real estate investment world for a bit, close to a year, I believe. Is that correct? A year or so?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, he's a doctor out of Virginia right now, and East Coast. And the whole point of us meeting and talking is just to kind of get people's perspective. It's kind of twofold. People in healthcare, because both you and I are in healthcare. You being a physician, you definitely have an interesting perspective of what's going on. And myself, I did 24 years in healthcare, and I kind of had an epiphany that I was done with all this working a 9 to 5 job and stuff like that.
Right.
So Dr. Frost has a really interesting story. I'm going to give you a few minutes just to introduce yourself, and please tell us about your podcast because you have an awesome podcast, which I will bring up later on. But
Okay.
please give us a quick introduction, Doctor.
Okay. Well, thanks Mario for having me on. And I know we had when was the first time we had conversations? Like 6 or 9 months ago. I think we were
I think it was 6 months ago. Yeah.
when we first talked, and it
Yeah.
was just like
Capital raising.
it was like an acquaintance type of mutual acquaintance, and we had just talked briefly. So I'm really glad that we're continuing the relationship. But so I am a general practice doctor. And that's not a very common thing to hear. Like dentists will say, I'm a general practice dentist, and that's really common. Um, but doctors generally are board certified doctors. And part of my story, because you're asking, was that I kind of was feeling pretty lost during medical school, and I was like, I don't even know if I really want to do this long term. And the traditional thing is that you should work till you're like 65 and then
Right.
retire. And doctor stuff is like, this is like a glorified job. Like, what better job than being a doctor?
Right.
Like there's this Dragon Ball Z episode, the very first episode. If you ever go watch Dragon Ball Z, and one of the little kids is like, his mom is like, I want you to be an orthopedic surgeon. And he decides not to, and he decides to go on the adventures of Dragon Ball Z and all that stuff. I don't even remember their names. And so, just like culturally, it's accepted that being a doctor is like very highly regarded. And
Right.
so
Right.
I think I slowly started to think like, I'm not quite sure if this is really for me. And so I was a transitional year intern, and I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And then, I've thought about, so basically I was what's called a general medical officer for a couple years in the military. And then I started family medicine residency. And I still remember before residency even started, I didn't really I was not looking forward to it. Like, I kind of felt like I was obligated to go do a residency just because that's more the norm.
That's what the path is, right?
That's what the path is, right? And so I just didn't really I just wasn't really excited about it. I think, and now that I'm like out of residency and I've been focusing on real estate, I think back on when was the time I was happiest. And I think one of the times that I was really happy in my life was between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And I had this window washing business that I had started. And I was like knocking doors, going door to door, selling my own window washing. And I was like bidding people and seeing what they wanted. And like I was going to like the big houses in the neighborhood and stuff like that. And then I was hiring my brother and my neighbor to actually wash the windows while I was going around like doing the sales of the window washing. And I just remember I loved it. Like, I was obsessed with it, infatuated with it. And then when I went back to college, sophomore year of college, I was just like sad and depressed. No.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I listened to that podcast in which you told that story.
Oh, did I tell that story? Okay.
You did tell that story in that podcast, and it was really interesting because within that podcast you're talking about exactly you're mentioning it. The transition from being a young entrepreneur to then following what society says. Go to school for 12 years in high school and all that, and then many years like yourself, to become a doctor. And then on top of that, you have to do all the residencies and specialties and all that stuff. So they kind of put you on a path of like be the rat in the maze. Uh, this is what you're gonna do, and then on top of that, pay a lot of money in loans,
Yeah.
and you got a taste of entrepreneur life, which is really interesting. And I think that you have that still in you. So with all that, what would you say was how's been your journey towards your financial independence per se as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think first of all, I think people throw the word entrepreneur around loosely. And I call myself an entrepreneur all the time. I guess in my eyes, like a real entrepreneur is somebody that's like actually jumped off the ledge, actually jumped out of the airplane, and like their their sole income is their baby that they're like trying to grow. So
Right.
right now it's just a side hustle. I feel like I'm more like a side hustler than a entrepreneur. But
Really? Well, here I'll be
but
the one to
I don't know.
validate this.
What do you think?
You are an entrepreneur
Okay.
because you have your own business.
Yeah.
Um, you are an investor on top of that.
Yeah.
You are managing your own enterprise with your podcast and your Facebook posting and your LinkedIn and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and so to me, it's okay to call yourself that
You
because
think so?
I believe so because that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I was intrigued to speak with you because you are somebody that's actually doing it, and it's okay to have that badge because on top of all that, you are a father, you're in the army, you're a husband, and congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you.
And you're doing that plus being a doctor. And for people who don't know, doctors' hours are not fun. Although I know you're doing a little bit more of the managerial administrative side, it's still a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, maybe I'm just selling myself short. Maybe I could call
you
myself
are.
an entrepreneur. It doesn't either way. I've taken steps in my professional career that are kind of backwards to create a new path that
Okay.
I want, in my life. So, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. Sure.
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Because that's exactly what I think you are. So
Yeah.
now being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
What was the question? I forgot. I went on a
Well, you
tangent.
answered the question. You answered it fine. So a lead up question or a follow up. Now that we established that you are a 100% honest to God entrepreneur, on top of being a doctor
Okay.
and a busy person, um, what would you say are some of the difficulties in doing the entrepreneur lifestyle, the following that path? Because it's very easy for somebody. My wife calls it a worker bee, right? Because I don't believe
Yeah.
in that mentality. In this country, I'm an immigrant, so in this country, you can do anything you want. You
Right.
have access to anything. And growing up, you know, um, seeing people who had the means or of doing or accessing things, and they were just comfortable not doing it, and then learning about how somebody's just comfortable working a 9 to 5 job, because they're worker bees. So my wife taught me about the worker bee because I could not comprehend that mentality. She's like, no, there's worker bees, and then there's people who like to do what kind of you and I are doing. And that's okay. She drilled that into my head that it's okay, and it's true. It is 100% fine. However, we're not like that. We need to do more, right? And doing more and going to the pretty much the ledge and at the edge of the comfort zone that you're in. What have you been some of the difficulties that you've encountered in this path that you're taking?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I decided like I'm gonna do this, I thought, I'd always heard the phrase, money is on the other side of fear.
Mm,
So I thought like, oh, okay, you just like do this scary thing and then there's money, right? Well, what I found is that you have to do a lot of scary things over and over and over again, repeatedly, and then at some point you will find the money. Like I think in the book Think and Grow Rich, he
right.
talked about the miner who is going and digging and digging and digging for like a long time looking for that gold, and he just never quite finds it, and he gives up. But then somebody else goes behind him and like takes off from where he is, and like the gold was like a few axe swings away, like he was
Oh,
so close to it.
yeah.
So there's like this, you know, like in medicine, there is a clear path, and you do 4 years of undergrad, you do medical school, you do like these are the things that hundreds or thousands of people have gone before you and have done, and then you just have to like follow that path. And you have to follow the path well, and it's a difficult path, and there's a lot of people that get filtered out, but it is like a path, and there's like steps that you follow that people have laid before you. But this is like it almost feels like the opposite. Like it feels like hunting for gold. Like even though there's other courses you can take, you can. I felt like, okay, if I'm gonna go be this entrepreneur, be my own self, I've just like not wanted to buy somebody's course and follow the steps in the course. I'm like, I'm being hardcore me, and I'm only going to do what I like,
Okay.
and I'm only going to like figure it out my way. But because of that, it's like this like journey that it's like it's hard to know exactly. I think it took me probably a year just to say I just want to raise capital. Like I was going down the path of like pre-foreclosures and wholesaling, and I was cold calling people and talking to agents and doing all those things, and it never quite felt right. But I don't know, just the in medical school, I think they had it perfectly calculated and planned out so that they could like get exactly the amount out of you as possible in a week. And there's like a curriculum, and it was like
All right.
not all planned out. But this is like, okay, you sit down, nobody is telling you what to do. It all has to be internally motivated. You could sit around and do nothing, or you could sit around and like do everything. So it's just trying to like create, systems and processes so that I'm productive versus somebody else like telling me what to do every day. It's like way harder than I thought it would be.
So, what are some of the examples of the way harder things that you've done? Trying to do it on your own.
Well, I mean, like, so if I were to go to clinic, they have patients scheduled every 20 minutes, and I just go, and there's somebody that comes in, they get checked in at the front, and then there's a nurse that screens them up, and then they present the patient to me, and like they have an electronic health record, and like I just do that over and over and over again. But for me, when I sit down and I start to work, it's like, okay, I could post on Instagram, post on LinkedIn, post on YouTube, post on TikTok. I could do cold outreach to, my friends on Facebook. I can do cold outreach on LinkedIn. I can, keep on networking with other entrepreneurs. I could go, like for lunch, it's like I could go sit down at a local bar and sit down and try to talk to somebody and try to find money that way. Like there's so many different, like trying to raise capital, there's so many different avenues. And I feel like that example I was sharing with you with the gold miner, it's like I don't know where the gold is. I'm just mining away and mining and
Okay.
mining and
Well,
trying to find it,
I want to tell you. I want to tell you something. This is something that you probably don't realize, but you from far away, I've been following your
Yeah.
story, and I was talking to John Lane, which we both know,
Yeah.
and John's, I was talking to him about possibly doing a podcast and YouTube videos and stuff like that, and in one of the I think the Saturday LinkedIn calls that he has,
Yeah.
he said, "Well, do you know what Landon is doing?" It's like, "No, but I see him in the videos, and he's doing live cast and live webinars and all these things." And he's like, "Does anybody know how he does that?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, he's doing this, and that." It's like, "Oh, cool." So I learned about you and from you from a third party.
Oh,
So,
really?
oh yeah, he even this system that I'm using, StreamYard, it was because of what John said that Dr. Frost was doing, and you know, and so you are that person that's ahead of me, showing me the path, and that I want to let you know that that is really interesting because the work that you're doing is being seen.
Okay.
You're being seen.
Yeah.
A lot of people know about you, and it's really interesting. And kudos to you because what most people don't realize, right?
Yeah.
And I always bring up my son. He's a young 21-year-old who was actually doing entrepreneur stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew when he was young that he was not meant to go to university and all that stuff.
Yeah.
His brain is just not wired like that.
Yeah.
Like yourself, I went and did the whole, undergrad. I got a master's. Did not want to go to medical school. I went the other way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I knew that that's not like he's that's not his path. My daughter, on the other hand, she's a nerd. We'll
Yeah.
talk articles, we'll talk videos, and we'll discuss the body and what the brain is doing. And she's trying to be a speech therapist, so we're always talking, cognitive things.
Oh,
And
cool.
that's not my son, right? And that's okay because he's doing it, and he is one that I'm watching him doing it, and he encourages me. But what people need to understand is that this is hard. This is extremely difficult,
Yeah.
and like you mentioned the whole self-drive thing, right?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Tell me, when your days that you don't have that self-drive, what are you thinking? You're like, did I make a mistake? Should I be doing this? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. And I was thinking about something that you said triggered this thought. I think in the path of education, like you're used to having like a small obstacle or like a test, and then you take the test and it's over,
Yep.
and you get rewarded, and it's like a dopamine thing. And then you take a test and then you get rewarded, and then you take a test and you get rewarded, and it's like you're following this. Like you do something and you like, I don't know.
It's a conditioned
There's like a,
response.
there's like a feedback loop, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no feedback loop. You just have to like do it, and like you don't know if it worked or not. Like I didn't know you were following me. I don't know what the impact is that I'm having. Like this is one of the few times where somebody's like, "Hey, good job." But I think I don't know. I think when I was deciding to do this, I really felt like really really deep down inside that and we could talk like spiritual wise, like I felt like God wanted me to like come to this point and get all this experience to like come to this conclusion that there's something else out for me. So like I don't regret any of medical school. I don't regret joining the military. Like I am who I am because of all of that. Um and I think all of that has set me up to be this, have this really unique perspective that probably hardly anybody has. Um to go like do really big things. So I think because I had I was involved with, I did a lot of prayer, and I did a lot of counseling with my therapist, like processing processing my thoughts and making sure I was leaving residency for the right reasons. I think if I had just been like meh, like I want to go try to make some money somewhere. Like if it wasn't like a really deeply seated like thought and that I had like, I almost don't even feel like it came from me. I feel like it came from like an external source. But because of that, I feel like it's like I'm going to do this, and I feel like there's a lot of purpose behind what I do, and at this point, there's not really a decision of going back or not. It's like it's only like going forward right now, and so yeah, I think every time there's like an obstacle, I just know that like that's an obstacle, and it's a good thing that there's an obstacle because it means somebody else is facing that obstacle, but they don't have the drive and motivation that I have. So I'm going to get over that obstacle where other people will not get over that obstacle.
Right. And that's something that, is 100% true in regards to, your second path that you're taking, and I agree. I do believe that it's kind of a calling, because it's bigger than what you're doing, right? Because I understand exactly what you're going through because I went through that, right? Of that, is there more than this? Do I need to be doing more than this? I used to walk into, park the car, look up at the hospital and go, I'm doing the same thing over and over. This
Yeah.
is deja vu every single day for like 2 years, and I kept telling my wife, I'm like, I think I'm done. My vice president was telling me, like, what are your goals for next year? I'm like, don't know. I reached all my goals. Our unit is doing well, is recognized everywhere. We met all their budget metrics, everything. And I'm like, I think it's time for me to teach the next person and next man up, right? This is the whole succession planning. And that took about 2 years. And after that, I was like, now what? And it's so good to hear that that's kind of what you went through because a lot of times people feel alone, right? You and myself, specifically like in healthcare, and other people that are just starting out, the young 20 something, 30-year-olds are second guessing, the work that they're doing and the difficulty of taking this step. So, with that being said, what would you say, are not necessarily the obstacles or like what was the driving force for you to kind of like take the plunge and get into what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, man, it's really hard to know exactly. I mean, I was really strongly influenced by Rich Dad Poor Dad, like a lot of people
Right.
are. And I don't know exactly what the driving force was. Um, there's this analogy. Have you ever heard the story of the Golden Buddha?
I don't think so.
You know,
Tell
the
me.
Golden Buddha with like the clay and
No,
okay,
tell me.
so
Teach us.
okay, so the Golden Buddha is I think it's Bangladesh. So in like a long time ago, like 1500s or 1700s or something like that, there's this Golden Buddha in this Buddhist monastery, and there was this time when like their city was going to get invaded, and so what they did was they took this giant golden statue and they covered it full of mud. They put mud all over it to hide it, so that when I don't remember the exact history, but when they came in to like ransack this Buddhist monastery, they saw this clay Buddha statue, so they ignored it and they left it. And then like years later, I think like in the 1970s, the local people were moving the golden or the clay Buddha, and when they were moving it, somebody saw a crack in the clay, and they saw like a shimmer.
Oh
And
wow.
so what they did was they started peeling back the clay, and what they found was that there was this golden Buddha statue behind all the clay, right?
Wow.
And so that story is something that's been with me for a long time. Well, no, probably the last couple of years, but it was just something that I had heard. And the story or the like lesson from the story is that we don't need to change anything. There's nothing we need to change about ourselves, really, because we're all like golden Buddhas. What we need to change is we need to change the doubts and the fears that are covering who we really are on the inside.
That's
And so
actually
if we
really
can,
that's beautiful.
yeah. So I don't think that like there was something that like struck me and said like, oh, you need to do this. I think I always wanted to do it. Um, I just had a lot of doubt and fear. And there was just a time when I was just ready. I was just ready to like let go of the doubts and fears and just like embrace who I was on the inside and just be myself, like not worry about other people's opinions and just lean into, my true self. And so that's what I did.
That's beautiful. That's actually so good to hear that, because a lot of people don't say that, you know? They just say, go read that book, take that class, and go get rich. You know, it's money first, and like I keep telling my son, I'm like, it's not about the money, it's not. It's like in the community, and you mentioned it in your podcast and in when being in Pace Morby's community is the go giver attitude, right? And you are a healer because you are in healthcare. You're a healer. You got into medicine because you're a caregiver by heart. You're that person that likes to help people out. Anybody that's in healthcare, it's always
Yeah.
been like that. There's
You
always a
kind of have
story.
to have that. Yeah. I don't think people go into healthcare if they don't have some degree of that for sure.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like deep within us, right? It could be because um they saw a grandparent get sick, or they had a mom or dad that survived cancer or died of cancer, or a best friend that had a horrible accident and became paralyzed. There's something in there. You ask any healthcare person, and there's always that little nugget of like, this is why I got into healthcare, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
but we all grow, right?
Yep.
one of
Yeah.
one of the things for me has been the financial component of investing, right? Been investing for over 20 something years, right? Stock market and different things. And one of the things that I notice is that anywhere, and you actually, I think it was you who mentioned that a lot of doctors get in, but they're always spending money in their cars and their homes, and they're paying off their loans and stuff like that. And so it's kind of like a fallacy to think that every single doctor is a multimillionaire, when it's not true, because either they're living out of their means, or
Yeah.
they're stuck paying a huge debt, and because they're not in one of those glorious, like, you are a IR kind of doctor that's doing this specific surgeries, or like
Yeah.
thoracic jock, wait, hold on, I've lost the word, thoracic
Cardiothoracic.
doctor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cardiothoracic surgeon who
Yeah.
is in demand, right? Or the brain surgeons who are in
Right.
demand. Yeah, those guys are getting 800, $900 million a year, but they don't have life.
1,000.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
exactly.
And like the tax brackets are set up so that you, like, if you think you're going to go from 200,000 to 400,000 and double, well, you're not really doubling. You're entering a different tax bracket. So you start paying more taxes when you start going
Exactly.
up as well. So it's like
So
this.
that's an excellent point that you bring up, because a lot of people don't realize that, right? They think that more money, the more freedoms you get, but in reality, it's like you stated. You actually pay more taxes and things like that. What advice would you give healthcare workers, professionals who feel that they're stuck in their financial situation?
You know, um, it probably depends on how much money they earn, but I think I think the whole like financial freedom thing can really be like misinterpreted, and I think some people are like, man, if only I could earn X amount of dollars and I'd be financially free. And I think you actually have to be emotionally free from money
Right.
before you become financially free. Like I mean, I think there's layers. I think you have to be emotionally, to some degree, it's paradoxical. You have to emotionally detach yourself from money in order to be financially free. Um, there's a really good movie. My favorite movie is Fight Club, which is all
Yes.
about consumerism.
Yes.
Have you seen that movie?
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
First of the Fight Club. Got it.
yeah. So like, there's this line he talks about, like, what is a duvet? And he talks about how a duvet is a blanket, you
Yes.
know? And he's like, do we really need, like, as humans that evolved in nature, like hunting hunting elephants, like, do we really need a duvet? Do we really need to be like in that comfort of a nice plush blanket? Um, and like, if you're financially stuck, there's some level of like you're holding on to that duvet, like you're wrapping yourself in that warm blanket, and you're just not willing to let go of that blanket. And there has to be, maybe part of the comfort is you're not willing to confront people in your family that are spending your money, or
Yeah.
maybe you're spending too much of your own money. Um, yeah, there's financial planning and things like that, but I think a lot of it is like psychologically being tied to money more than like actual numbers in your bank account.
I agree with you 100%. And you're speaking the truth right now, because that's stuff that people don't realize. And that's why I have you on here, because a lot of people need to hear that, especially somebody, like yourself, who is a doctor and is also an entrepreneur, and it's got this path, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily.
Yeah, let me give you an example. I was talking to
Yes.
somebody, and one of the questions I ask doctors when I'm talking to them about investing is I say, how much money, like how much monthly income would you need to be financially free? And there was this one doctor that I've talked to, and he said, I would need $60,000 a month
Oh my God.
to be financially free. And I'm like, do you because he, in his mind, he's not financially free until he can match his current income.
Oh,
So like, I think there needs to be an adjustment of like what you really actually need to be financially free. I mean, I know it's getting really expensive these days, but like probably, and I can't speak to this for everybody, but I have 5 kids, and like I don't think you need to earn more than I don't think you need to earn $60,000 a month to be financially free. So I think there's probably a number that's a lot lower than what you think it is to actually be financially free. Um, so I think there just needs to be like a change in expectations. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
no, that's excellent. So to piggyback on what you just stated, so what do you think is we'll say a fallacy, or what financial freedom means?
Yeah. What's a fallacy?
Yeah, what do you think, or what is?
Well, okay, so like I'm a huge fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm sure
Yes.
you know who Gary Vee is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he gives this analogy, and I've thought about this a lot, where he's like, let's say you are obsessed with snow globes and you love snow globes. And he's like, should you spend your life going to do real estate so that you can go to like the global or the national snow globe conference? Or should you just be obsessed with snow globes and like have that be your life, and then like figure out how to earn an income with snow globes?
Right.
And so like, I think if there's something that people want in their lives, um, you know, it's okay, especially in this age. Like you can pretty much figure out any niche or anything that you like and make social media and like create income that way. So I don't know. I guess like whatever it is to Of course, everybody has to have their, there's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to have some of your needs met. But I think to be financially free, I think there's this fallacy that if you earn a certain amount of money, then you're going to finally give yourself permission to go like chase your dreams. But I think it's better just to go chase your dreams and be okay with being kind of broke and like having less money. I think that's more financially free.
Kind of like a weird reverse engineering type of thing,
Yeah.
just set a goal and then try to work it to get there. Um, we're talking a lot about the financial stuff and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you recommend to somebody again, who's starting out or even who is in the entrepreneurial world? How do they balance, or how would you what would be your advice balancing enjoying life today while still planning for the future?
Dude, I don't know. I'm not a great planner. I feel like I'm kind of reckless a little bit. Like
Organized chaos.
yeah. Like there's like the traditional way of financially planning for the future, like put 10 to 15% of your savings or your income into savvy investments. There's that. That's more of like a passive investing. And then there's active investing where you're managing those assets. I think you just have to, and this is hard, but you have to think of what you want, and maybe it's 3 months in advance, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 5 years, but I'd say probably not go more than 5 years, but think about what you want in 5 years and then just reverse engineer and figure out what you need to do to get there.
Okay.
And if you just want to plan like this is what I want by 65 is I want to retire and live off of whatever $10,000 a month, then yeah, you could do that and just continue to progress your career. And I think some people are very happy with having a 20-year career in something. I actually strongly think that not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I think the majority of people, I think entrepreneurs sometimes poke fun of people that are just like in the rat race, but I think some people, or a lot of people, just they don't even think that they're in a rat race. They're just following a successful career, and like there's nothing wrong with that at all. So
No, and I agree, and I think that kind of living in both worlds, it's true, and I think that's one of those myths that people talk about. When you're an entrepreneur, you have all the time that you want to do things and stuff like that, and that's not true, because even if you have your own business, or you're trying to invest in something where you're like capital raising, like you're doing, right?
yeah,
You're working, you're picking up the phone, you're going to conferences, you're going to meetups, you're doing things, and sometimes no, you don't have the time to just stop and go to Dubai for a vacation. I mean, like, no, that's not it's not true. It's life. Sometimes it's busier than doing a 9 to 5 job.
yeah.
And so people, I think, need to realize that it's not glamorous. It can be, it can get there, but it's not like I quit my job and in 2 weeks I'm going to be super rich and famous. Like, nope.
Yeah, I think you have to be okay with the process. And I know that's like super cliche to say, but I think people that want to just quit the 9 to 5 because they're sick of it and they're not like, I really want to go do something else. Like if you're just burned out and you can't think of something like the snow globe, if you don't have your snow globe business that you want to go like pursue, then maybe it's not worth it. I think there's seasons, and I think like if you told me to not do medicine and when I was 23 in college, like I would just not listen to you because that was like my brain was
right.
I was going to go be a doctor. It took me a long time to get to this point. So
Man,
I don't think did I answer your question?
You did. No, you did. And I think it's because it's the honesty part, right? That people need to hear that, right? What is a common myth about building wealth that you like to debunk?
Ooh, man, building wealth. I think pretty much what I said already, that I don't think people realize that the fastest way to build wealth is with leverage. Like, what leverage is, and I don't know what leverage is, where you're leveraging other people's
Mhm.
experience, leveraging other people's networks, leveraging other people's money. Like, if you are putting your money in your 401k and then they're giving you a return, they're leveraging you,
Right.
and they're building their wealth faster than you're building your wealth because they're leveraging you. So if you want to grow your wealth faster, you have to start playing the game of leveraging other people in general, like leveraging other people's experience, other people's money. Um, I would say that's more the fastest path to wealth. Like, you have to get off the W-2 path a little bit and be more active if you want to grow that money faster.
And that is extremely super hard to do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It
Well,
is.
I promise you I wasn't going to keep you here too long, so I just got one final question.
Okay.
So, people listening, or when they'll watch this, um, they're inspiring to do more than what they're doing right now. You know, being super rich, or being an entrepreneur, or being an investor and stuff like that. If you could give them one piece of advice, anybody that's just starting out in their life to do something different, what would that be?
Yeah. I would say just experiment. Like, I would say when you're starting out, just accept that you're in the experimenting phase. And being an entrepreneur is like, to me, it's like an art. It's like painting, it's like creating music. It's figuring out who you are on the inside. Um, like the golden Buddha thing. Like, you have to figure out what color your golden Buddha is and what it looks like, and like figure out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. I think you just have to experiment as much as possible. And people say, take action a lot. You gotta go try out, like, riding a skateboard, and then go try, like, playing basketball, and then go try, like, swimming. Like, go try all these different things out and, like, get a flavor of all of it. And then you'll eventually start being like, man, I really liked this one particular activity, like that. I felt like that gave me a lot of energy. And then it's like the game hot and cold, when you hide something in a room and
Right.
somebody else is telling you if you're hot or cold. Like, eventually you slowly play that game, and like you start figuring out where like what's working for you personally and what's not. And then I feel like once you find that, then I feel like you just take that thing and then you just roll with it. But if you just go sign up for somebody else's course and then you go do that course, it might not be playing to your strengths, and you might not even like it, and that's okay. So
That's
yeah.
perfectly stated. That's awesome advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Frost, for being here, and allowing me to ask you some, different types of questions.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no problem. I was really reluctant to come on, because I'm not like, I feel like I generally like to interview other people because I like to find people that like have a lot of success. Um, and so I'm glad though. This felt good. This felt good just talking about, the journey, the building the sandcastle phase. So I
you have a very strong
appreciate you.
foundation. You have a very strong foundation, and people are seeing that, and that's why I reached out to you, because you know however you're feeling, or you might be doing or not doing, to me it's all success.
Yeah.
And that's from all the way over here in Texas. I know you're all the way in the East Coast, and if I can see that, I'm pretty sure a lot of people can see the path that you're taking, and it's super successful. But thank you so much,
Okay.
um,
Thank you.
and we'll see you next time.
All right, Mario.